Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to the Netherlands once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that I brought back with me from my recent trip down there. So we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before, and this is one that I have to say I am very curious about because it is one of my favourite sort of sub-styles, if you like. So we are going to go to Leiden, just to the south of Amsterdam, a really beautiful little city, home to the Netherlands' oldest university and also the world's oldest astronomy school. Maybe I'll go and do my PhD there someday. We'll need to see about that. Fingers crossed, but something that would be awesome if it happened in the future. But it's also home to this brewery, who do seem to be quite highly rated. So for this review then, we are going to have a look at my first beer from Brouwerij Pronck. This beer is called the Kakariki Motueka. It comes in at 7.5% ABV, and this one is a New Zealand hopped IPA. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. The Motueka hop, as we know, is a lovely limey thing. Sometimes you can get a wee bit of orange out of it, if I remember rightly, but yeah, quite a limey hop, this one. But you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I'm a huge fan of the New Zealand hops, and that kind of kicked off when I went and actually visited New Zealand back in about 2015. So yeah, really curious about this one, and hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this. So this is another beer that I bought at the Bierwinkel in Leiden, and that's a beer shop that I would highly recommend you check out. Peter that runs it is a really nice guy, and he'll sort you out with boxes if you want to order online and things like that. So I'll try to remember to put the link to his Facebook page in the description below, but do go and check out his shop if you find yourself in Leiden. Awesome selection of things there. A hell of a lot of Belgian beer, a lot of Dutch craft beers, and various other kind of world things as well, so definitely worth checking out. And I did get a nice little selection of stuff when I was in there, I have to say as well, so do check him out. But also a big shout out to my friends in the Dutch Beer Collective, and I'm kind of an honorary member of that these days. So there's Thomas Hoendam, who is Thomas Open here on YouTube. There is Remy Den Dupe, who is Beer Geek Holland, the OG Dutch beer tuber. There's Herben Caspers, who is Dutch Beer Geek, and then you also have now Douglas Hesselmans, who is Beers with Douglas. So yeah, do make sure you go and check out the link to their Facebook and their Instagram page in the description below. If you go onto the Dutch Beer Collective one, you'll find the links to all their individual channels, and they've all got some really nice videos. They review in Dutch mainly, but there are quite a few English videos in there these days as well. But you'll see them on my channel every so often. They do like to come on. Thomas is probably the most regular, but the other guys do come on as well. But lovely guys, and you will see more of them on my channel at a future time once the corona pandemic just buggers off. But yeah, always nice to give these guys a shout out, so do make sure you go and show them some love. And it's always nice to review some Dutch beers for you here on the channel, because the standard of stuff down there is pretty good. Apparently they've got about 700 breweries down there, and like I said, I first encountered the Dutch beer back in about 2015. I was very impressed by the standard, but I think it does suffer a little bit because being next to Germany and being next to Belgium, the Dutch beer, you just don't hear of it as much because of its two kind of big beer producing neighbours. And but the stuff is really good actually, so make sure you try some Dutch beers if you get the chance. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Brouwerij Pronck. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Dutch beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment, because I still have about 12 or so Dutch beers left, but you will be seeing Dutch beers reviewed regularly on the channel from now on. We will make sure about that. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brouwerij Pronck then, on to my brewery notes. And yeah, I do apologise for any bad Dutch pronunciations in this. The thing that always gets me with Dutch is that the G is like a ch sound, so probably that's the thing that I'm going to mess up in this. But anyway, Brouwerij Pronck was founded back in 2014 by Frans May and Benjamin Weigman. These two guys were members of the Minerva student organisation at Leiden University, and they'd done some homebrewing together in around 2012-2013. But Franz was studying journalism, while Benjamin, on the other hand, was studying tax law. And at the time of the foundation of this brewery, or the official foundation in 2014, it was one of the smallest in the Netherlands overall, and they brewed 300-litre batches at their at the original site. But soon after that, they moved to an old school in Ter Harkede, if I'm pronouncing that right, probably not again, but the first batch was brewed officially in January of 2015. Over the coming years they continued to expand, and then later in 2017 they moved to a new site at the centre of Langegracht, if I've pronounced that like Langegracht. Crazy Dutch pronunciations. But this new site that they had was equipped with an 800-litre brew kit, and this took the capacity of the brewery up to the 600 hectolitre mark. The main man behind the beer brewing was originally Franz, but these days they've got another brewer now called Mathieu. And they're helped to run the business by an army of volunteers. Actually, they've if you go onto the website and look at the team, they've got a hell of a lot of people doing lots of different things. So it's pretty cool actually that they can run their small business with lots of different volunteers. I think that is pretty damn cool actually. But yeah, the two main guys are still involved in this one. I think they do have some full-time employees. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 kind of full-time employees at the brewery, but then they've got another like 7 or 8 people who are volunteers helping them out and things like that. They offer brewery tours if you look at the website as well, and they'll also let you brew your own beer. They'll give you like a beer brewing workshop at the brewery as well with Franz, which is pretty cool. So yeah, lots of things you can do with these guys, and yeah, I just thought it was very cool to review a local Leiden beer for you, because that's probably the place that I kind of associate with most in the Netherlands. The other really good brewery that's there is the Leidsch beer. That was a really interesting brewery, but I couldn't see any of their stuff actually. They didn't have any of that in the Bierwinkel, unfortunately, because otherwise I would have got another Leidsch beer to review for you here on the channel. But maybe I can talk to Herman about that. He's from not too far away in Alphen den Rijn. So yeah, maybe I can get a few more Leiden sort of area beers in the next in a box or something like that from the Dutch guys at some stage, but we'll sort that out later. But yeah, definitely cool to introduce these guys for you here on the channel, as I said, and that's all I can really tell you about them for the moment. But yeah, I'm sure we'll hopefully be able to review some of their beers later on at some point in the future as well. But yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. I'm very curious about this. As I say, I'm a huge fan of the New Zealand hops, having been there, been to New Zealand back in 2015. But there you can see the artwork on this one is really quite nice. The Kakariki is actually this little bird, so it's a type of parakeet that you'll find only in New Zealand, I think. Did they say red crested? No, crest is this one, red... the word's gone right out of my head, but yeah, basically the Kakariki on here, that is the bird, basically. Brain is not working, but there you can see this one apparently is the last in their series of special releases that they did with New Zealand hops. New Zealand hops, of course, in Europe are pretty expensive, so maybe that's why they just did it as a limited series. But there you can see, plain green bottle cap on this one, and it does have a wee thing in Dutch here on the side. De liste van New Zealand series specials, telkens gebrouwen met een andere New Zealand's hopsoort. So basically this is the last in the series of the New Zealand specials brewed with another New Zealand hopsoort. In deze laatste variant hebben we de Motueka hop gebruikt. We've used in this brew the Motueka, vervaagd with limonen of tropische fruit, so it gives notes of lemon and tropical fruit. I always would have said Motueka was more lime actually, so maybe I'll disagree with them on this. But yeah, so the hops in this one, there apparently is Chinook as well. I had a little look on the website and it said there was Chinook in this one, and also Motueka, and it tells you the malts on here as well. So there's Pale Ale, Cara 120, Biscuit, Munich, and what was Zermatt again? I did write that down. Sour malts. So yeah, quite an interesting blend of things in this one as well. But yeah, it tells you on the side here that the brewery is in the centre of Leiden and things. So yeah, who knows? Maybe the next time I get to Leiden I can do a wee interview with these guys. I'd love to interview the man behind, I forget his name now, but I'd love to interview the guy at Leidsch Beer. as well. Actually, that's definitely something for the future. But yeah, really nicely presented beer. This one, 330ml bottle. I think I paid like €3.50 or something like that for this beer. So yeah, this one was pretty cheap actually. The Netherlands is quite a high income country, so yeah, the craft beers will be a little bit pricey for some people, but you know, relative to the wages and stuff in the Netherlands, they're not crazy. They're not crazy. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. Curious to see what this has in store for us. So yeah, this is quite a dark IPA, this one. There's a bit of sediment actually around the bottle top there. That's a bit strange, look at that. Don't know how that happened. Maybe that happened when I brought it home on the plane or something like that. But yeah, this is the last of the regular IPAs that I have from the Netherlands. Actually, there is one or two black IPAs there, but they'll last a little bit longer, of course, and there's a lot of stouts and barley wines and stuff, so it's the stronger beers you're going to see reviewed over the next little while. This is the last of the lighter ones that we're looking at. But yeah, as we can see with this beer, this one's poured a very dark, I don't even know how to describe the colour of this one. This one's poured a very dark, it's a very, 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 very dark orange kind of colour, this one. It's almost kind of coppery. Yeah, coppery is probably a better description for this one. Nice sort of solid 1/4 finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head there. That's going to fade away to just be a very, very thin kind of foamy layer. It's already starting to do that, but if we put the light through this beer, there is a bit of that natural haze to it. In terms of the haziness, it is more like a kind of West Coaster than it is a New England one, this. And going by the malt base that's in this beer, this is more of a kind of West Coast type American IPA rather than a hazy New England one actually. But yeah, the New Zealand, I don't know if you could class a New Zealand IPA as a different style, if you like, than the West Coast and the East Coast. In New Zealand, from what I remember, they did have hazies, or they do have hazies now, and when I was there it was mainly kind of West Coast things. One of my favourite New Zealand brewed styles, incidentally, is the Imperial Red. The New Zealand hopped Imperial Reds are just beautiful actually. But yeah, in terms of its appearance, nothing overly surprising about this beer when you consider what style it is. It looks kind of as you would expect from a sort of West Coasty type IPA, but definitely a little bit darker than some of the ones that you're going to come across. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on two things: one, the type of malts that you use, and two, the length of the boil. The longer you boil the beer, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour out of it. But for a 7.5%er, yeah, you might boil it a little bit longer, and I think this one, going by the colour, but going by the malt types, I'm not sure if the Cara 120 is a bit of a dark malt, but the other ones that are in there shouldn't give it too much darkness actually, so maybe this one has got a little bit of a longer boil as well. But yeah, it certainly looks the part of an IPA, this one, so let's have a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this beer. Very curious about this. Ooh, it does smell quite nice actually. So yeah, straight away with this one, you can smell that nice sort of bready backbone to it. The Munich malts in here are going to give you that lovely white bready sort of thing. For me, there is a wee bit of a kind of brown bready bread crust to this one as well actually, so I really like that about it. It has got a really nice sort of white bready bread crusty backbone to it. You can smell the kind of biscuits out of this. You do get a straight up McVitie's digestive biscuit out of this one as well. When they say biscuit malt, they mean biscuit malt. So yeah, McVitie's digestive's all the way in this one. You do have a good bit of a sweet caramel in this one as well. It actually comes across as a slightly darker caramel, slightly more kind of, it's got a little bit of a toasty edge to it, and that kind of makes sense when you think about the colour of this beer as well. So it's got a nice kind of toasty, it does have a really nice kind of toasty thing to come out of it as well. So I really like the malty backbone with this beer. If you've watched the channel before, you will know that I do appreciate the malty side of beers quite a lot. So yeah, the aroma of this one I think is really quite nice actually. So yeah, malty side of this beer I think comes across really quite nicely. The more and more I smell of it, the more kind of, it does actually get a little bit more grainy and kind of brown bready, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's an interesting point I would make about this one. The malt base of this, it is quite bready for a West Coast IPA. In some ways it actually reminds me of some of the German brewed West Coast IPAs that I had, because they did always tend to be a little bit more sort of bready actually. But yeah, malty side of things, it is quite nice. I don't really get any of the sour. I was thinking you might find a little bit from the sour malt coming out of the aroma, but maybe we'll get a bit more of that in the actual flavour profile of the beer. But yeah, hoppy side of things then, let's focus on that. So remember, it's Chinook and Motueka that are in this one. So with this beer, it strikes me as if it's going to be a bit of a lower bitterness one. Maybe this is one where the IBUs are taken down a little bit. But yeah, there's a little bit of earthiness to this one, which you will sometimes get from Chinook. But as you move, as you come forward a little bit in the nose, you do start to get the more kind of green components out of the beer. You do get a little bit of a kind of floral aromaticity out of it. There's a bit of lighter grassiness in there as well, but I'm not getting so much of the big kind of piney resins that you would normally associate with Chinook. Chinook, of course, is an American hop. It's about 13-14% alpha acid, if I remember rightly. You can use it as an aroma hop, but personally I think it works a lot better as a bittering hop, an early addition hop. Remember, when it comes to the hops, if you add the hops earlier on in the boil, they're going to give you more bitterness, and as you progressively go along, when you add them later and later, you get the trade-off from bitterness towards flavour and aroma, if you like. But Motueka, I think Motueka, if I remember rightly, is only around 8 or 9%. The New Zealand hops, one of the surprising things you'll find with a lot of New Zealand hops is that for having a hell of a lot of fruity character and being lovely and juicy and oily in terms of that fruity character, they are actually remarkably low in alpha acid, a lot of them, compared to some of the American hops. But there are, some of them, they can range. I think some of the lowest ones, I'm sure it was Waiti that surprised me recently. Waiti can have like 4% alpha acid, and I'm sure Motueka is roughly about 8 or something. But yeah, the green side of the hops in this beer comes across really nicely, but I can't remember what the green component of Motueka is like. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer, I think, is quite straight up on this one. There is a wee bit of a sort of oily mango comes out of it for me. Maybe a wee touch of an apricot. I do get a little bit of pear out of this one as well, but I do get quite a lot of just oily lime, and that's what I would expect from Motueka. Motueka for me has always been quite a limey hop with a wee hint of orange in it, and maybe in fairness you can just get a wee hint of orange out of this one. But yeah, for me, wee bit of oily mango, a little bit of a peary ester to it, some lime, things like that, maybe a wee touch of sultanas or something like that. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is quite interesting as well. But yeah, the more I smell of it, the more the kind of juicy, oily, limey character starts to come out of the beer. So yeah, just take a little bit of time and enjoy that aroma before you get stuck into it. But this comes across as if it is going to be quite an interesting beer. So we're going to taste this one now. So this one is the Kakariki Motueka, basically this birdie Motueka. Coming in at 7.5% ABV, a sort of west coasty leaning IPA, I think, from Brouwerij Pronck in Leiden in the Netherlands. Let's have a taste of this one then. Very curious, I have to say. Slange, skål, proost. Ooh, yeah. That is quite interesting, that. When you first take the beer in, it does have a little bit of a bitter bite to it, but then it sort of mellows out a little bit, and now into the aftertaste I'm getting a wee bit more bitterness out of this one. So it's an interesting beer, this. It is quite a malty leaning IPA in my mind, but there is a good hoppy presence to it as well. It's definitely more of a kind of west coasty one, and I would say that my impression from the aroma that it was going to be quite similar to some of the sort of German brewed IPAs that I had before. That was right. This one does come across as a little bit like some of those ones that I had from Bergbrauerei is the one that comes to mind from Berlin, if I remember later. Berliner Bergbrauerei, if is that the full name? Yeah, something like that. But yeah, this is a pretty nice beer, this one. So where to start with it? Just make me curious about some of the other ones actually. I'd like to try a stout and a lager from these guys next perhaps. But yeah, I can see why Peter recommended me this one, because I said I like West Coast IPAs, and he said, well, here's a local one for you. So good recommendation. Good recommendation from the Bierwinkel. So yeah, this beer then, straight away with this one you get that nice kind of bready base, that just blankets the middle of your tongue and goes towards the back third of your palate. On the back third of your palate it gets distinctly more kind of grainy, if you like. It does get distinctively more kind of grainy and brown bready on the back part of your palate, but yeah, the breadiness kind of thickens up a wee bit as well, but there's a wee bit of a dry graininess on that back third of your tongue there, which is quite interesting. yeah, I really like how this how that goes together. It does have a nice. It does get a thumbs up from me. This one, the breadiness. I think the sweetness of the malty base in this one does build a little bit more the further that you go into it. But yeah, that whole bread crusty sort of, it's more like a wholemeal bread than a white bread, to be honest with you, that comes out of this one the further that you go into it. I've never seen Munich malt being quite as dark and grainy as this before, come to think of it. Maybe it's the paleo, maybe it's the specific type of paleo malt that's in here, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, this is interesting. So in the very middle of your palate, you do get a nice little bit of an oily caramel note out of this one. It is a little bit more toasty, it is like a slightly more toasty kind of brown sugar that you get out of this in a sense, and then as you move out from the centre of your palate towards the edge of the tongue, it's definitely got a little bit more of a kind of biscuity character to it, that McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, the back third of your palate, it is a little bit thicker but definitely a bit more grainy, and then as you go into the middle third of your palate, the thickness just drops off a bit, and then you get these kind of brown sugary notes that I'm talking about, the caramel and the sort of McVitie's digestive biscuity thing. I think the further you go into the aftertaste, pardon me, maybe one or two little woody notes come out of the beer and things. So I do like how this malty side of things goes together. But yeah, it does get a bit more grainy. It definitely gets a wee bit more grainy into the aftertaste. But yeah, a nice malt base for sure. I do like that. The other thing I would say about this is I'm not drinking this one at its freshest. That is one of the things, but it is still in good condition. I think it's maybe about, at the time that I'm filming this review for you, I think this one is maybe about 6 weeks old or something like that. So yeah, I think that's definitely fair to say about this one. But yeah, so it's not in its freshest condition, but it's still holding up pretty well, I would say. But yeah, that covers the malty side of the beer fairly well, I would think, so far. So yeah, if we go to the back corners of the palate, then there is definitely a little bit of earthiness comes out of this one. As you move further forward along the side of the palate, it develops a little bit of a herbal quality, but then you can feel in front of that, you do get a bit of that kind of piney resinous sort of thing that you would expect of the Chinook. The Chinook is really showing its more kind of resinous, piney sort of side there, and that comes out the further that you go into the aftertaste. So I really like that about this beer. On the front corners of the palate then, it does get a little bit more floral and aromatic, I would say, and then around the very front curve of the palate, it's definitely a bit lighter and more kind of grassy, but for me, the green side of the beer really leans a little bit more towards that darker kind of floral aromaticity, and there is a fair wee bit of bitterness out of this one. It's not the most bitter of kind of West Coasty type IPAs that I've had, but it does have a fair little whack of it, so yeah, that's what you want from these kind of beers actually, so yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. It's one that grows on me. I think this beer grows on me the more that I drink of it, but yeah, it comes across really nicely so far actually. But yeah, front third of your palate then, where you get those nice juicy fruity qualities rolling out of the beer. So yeah, on the front third of your palate then you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit of a kind of darker, you get a bit of that darker kind of grapefruit note of it. That'll be the Chinook showing its head. But yeah, as you move further forward from that, you do get a little touch of an almost, I get a little bit of a mango-y quality out of this one, but I'm getting some peary sultana type esters on top, but then on the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's that big, oily, limey thing that you would expect of Motueka. And it's been a very long time since I've had Motueka in a more West Coasty type IPA. I mean, I can't think back. Motueka, I think, has become a little bit more popular here in Europe within the last year or two, to be quite honest with you. I have seen it popping up in more and more beers recently. It seems that hops go in phases like that. They come and go. Starting to get more Amarillo again, having not seen that for a while. So there's all cycles and things going on, whether that's down to the farming or what, but there seems to be a sort of cycle of hops. Like a hop will disappear for quite a while, then come back. Simcoe was the other one that kind of disappeared for a bit in favour of Galaxy, but yeah, it always happens. So it's been a long time since I've had Motueka in a more West Coasty leaning IPA, but I think there's a general rule, whereas if a hop is put in a more kind of caramelly malt base like this, the fruits come across as a bit more oily, whereas if you put them in a New England IPA, they come across as a little bit more soft and juicy. So seeing this oily side of Motueka for me is quite interesting. I'm quite familiar with Chinook though, because it's that was always one of the bittering hops along with Columbus that you would quite often use. Tomahawk or Zeus maybe as well, in the CTZ blend, that was always quite popular in the West Coast IPAs. But yeah, seeing that more oily side of Motueka is quite interesting. But yeah, fruity side of the beer leans towards that limey side of things, a little bit of a sultana, perry type ester of it, and a wee bit of a kind of darker grapefruity note at the back of that front third of your palate too. So yeah, an interesting beer this one. I do like things that test your palate a little bit, but yeah, quite a bready leaning West Coast IPA this one, and a little bit graininess to it as well. So yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah, on the mouthfeel side of things then, I would describe this beer as being at the kind of top end and mid-bodied. Carbonation is quite smooth, and overall I would say that the mouthfeel is quite oily on this one, but in fairness you would expect that of this kind of more West Coasty type IPA. Bitterness, I want to say there's maybe about 60 IBUs in this one, and this is my weakest part when it comes to beer review. I've messed up the bitterness, the IBU, my thought on the IBU unit so far, so let's just see. Does it say on the bottle? Does it say how many IBUs it is? No, it doesn't. But I would say this one's about 60, maybe could be a little bit more. As I say, I'm not drinking it at its freshest, so maybe it's dropped off a wee bit. But yeah, you do get a nice big bit of kind of resinous quality from the Chinook. The Chinook is going to give you a good little bit of bitterness in this beer. I don't know if you can count it as bitterness, but you do get a bit of graininess in the middle of your palate out of this one as well. But then the malt base overall I would describe as being quite smooth and a little touch sweet, and the fruits are mainly oily, I would say. So yeah, it does remind me of quite a few of the German brewed West Coast IPAs that I had because of the level of breadiness that it has. But yeah, good little bit of sweetness, good bit of hoppy bitterness to it, and yeah, a nice change of pace actually to see a New Zealand focused West Coast IPA. So yeah, I think this has been an interesting first encounter with Brouwerij Pronck, and hopefully, as I said earlier, I can try a few more of their beers at some point in the future. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one just now. Always cool to review Dutch beers from different breweries that I've not had before. So yeah, let's leave it there. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer review in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brouwerij Pronck. If you are looking to see more beers reviewed from these guys, I would think that probably Herben at Dutch Beer Geek is your best bet, because he is the closest of the Dutch beer tubers to this brewery. So check out his channel in particular if you want to see more beers reviewed from these guys. And as I said, hopefully I can review a few more other things at some point in the future. That would be pretty cool. A stout, maybe a lager or something like that would be an interesting proposition from these guys. But yeah, this one was the, how do we pronounce it again? The Kakariki Motueka 7.5% West Coast type New Zealand hopped IPA from Brouwerij Pronck in Leiden in the southern part of the Netherlands, just a little bit to the south of Amsterdam. Beautiful city, like I said, and a place that I would highly recommend that you visit. Not too far away from De Molen actually, so you can go and visit their restaurant and brewery and things like that if you find yourself there. It's only about 10 minutes or something on the train actually. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out my friends at the Dutch Beer Collective, check out Brouwerij Pronck, and I will catch you guys very, very soon. Slanja, skål, cheers, the Kakariki Motueka from Brouwerij Pronck in Leiden in the south of the Netherlands. Proost.